Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to the question and answer session as part of the KVEC Special Education Paraeducator Conference. We wanted to let you know as the conference is concluding that we appreciate that each and every one of you attended the conference. Each of the sessions will be recorded and available to you to go back and review at a later date in case you missed a session that you would like to participate in again. So those will be available for you this summer, so you can earn some additional professional development hours through that. You will watch the video and take a quiz and have access to a certificate. So again, that way if you missed something or you wanted to go back and review something that you had, then that opportunity will be available. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Dionne Bates, and I'm one of the co-directors here at KVEC in the Special Education Department, and I take care of implementation and improvement.
I'm Doug Smith, behavior consultant and with the Special Education Department.
I'm Stephanie Kidd. I'm a math consultant here at KVEC with the Special Education Department.
So as we move forward today, you care to click that? As we move forward today, let's just talk a little bit about this session and how this one's going to be to set this session up. So if you have a question, thinking about yesterday's sessions, thinking about what you've learned this morning, we wanted to stop and give you an opportunity to ask us questions before we move forward. So we have Stephanie here that's been part of the instructional sessions, and Doug that's been part of the behavior sessions. And so we're here just to answer questions. We wanted to open the floor up before we provided any other, before we move forward for anything else. But so if you have a question, please feel free to unmute your mic, turn your camera on. And for all of you out there that would like to participate and turn your camera on, we'd love to see your faces. We will be modeling some activities, and you may want to turn your camera on just so we can talk back and forth with you about the how you do the activities. That way you can ask questions. So if you have a question, you can either one of those two ways, to drop it in the chat or to turn your camera on and your mic on and ask questions. So any clarifications, I'm gonna stop right there and let you just ask questions and talk for just a minute. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna talk a little bit about a few things that we wanted to talk about, your role and how important your role is, and what some of the things that you can do to support the kids that you work with in your every day at school. So I'm going to get to Stephanie, if you'll click to the next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about small group and one-on-one instruction. So a lot of times those will be two of the situations that you're in as in your role, and you'll either have a small group of students that you're working with, or you'll be working one-to-one with a student. So some things that we wanted to talk about during that is that if you're in a small group, you may have some students that you're working with that you're kind of helping them get caught up, or you're giving them some extra instruction time. Sometimes you're trying to think about ways that you can work with them, or you may have some time when you could integrate some new things. So what our plan is to just equip you with some ideas, some tools, and some resources that you can use either in that time when you have those groups, a small group, or if you're working with a student individually, and how you can fill that time with something that's helpful and meaningful for students. So part of that is that planning. How can we plan and be prepared? Because, you know, in a school, in real life setting, there's always times when our schedules get interrupted, things like picture day, or a change in our lunch schedule, or a bus late. You know, there's always these things that happen in a school day. And so if we're prepared and if we plan and we have a small group of students, we can intentionally do activities that supports their learning or their behavior. And so planning is a really important component when we think about our role as a paraeducator. The other thing is that we want to equip you with tools and resources. So part of the thinking around this conference has been, how do we get you materials and resources that you would need that in a very small period of time that you could use to work with students. And so Dr. Anita Archer, she does a lot around explicit instruction. And one of the things she talks about is we can think of activities that have a real high impact for students, but that are low prep. And so that's kind of the notion that we're talking about with some of these activities that we've shown you throughout the course of this conference, is how do we plan and prep for things when our schedules change on a dime. Again, we know how that is because, that's just the way schools happen, and that's the way our daily business is at school. So that's another important thing we wanted to talk about. And then we're going to talk about how is it that we can help collect data? How do we make sure that we know that students are progressing? So an important role as a paraeducator is we can contribute to collecting data and knowing where a student is at, and being able to work with the teacher, with the special ed teacher, the regular ed teacher, and we all can talk about where the student's performing at. And then the other thing we're talking a little bit about is specially designed instruction. And what specially designed instruction is what's special to that unique student. So specially designed instruction is what happens in addition to what kids get as part of their IEP. So in their IEP, they have goals and objectives that they're working on. And so in order to reach those goals and objectives, we have specially designed instruction. That's what makes it special, again, for those students. And so part of that instruction is a lot of real explicit instruction. It's modeling. It's giving them opportunities for using manipulatives. It's opportunities for them to self-monitor and check their behavior. And so if you know of these things and understand those tools and resources, then you can be much more effective. And it makes your day better. It makes your students' day better. And it gives you your own toolbox of things to do and resources. So if you don't care, go ahead, Doug.
I like to go back to the planning part. You talked about the way that sometimes our daily routine or schedule changes. And, with your kids, with myself, it makes me, it creates that anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I get stressed out. And so it affects my behavior. So, with our kids, we've all seen it, like you said, picture day, or we have a fire alarm or something mm-hmm. like that. If there's something coming up that ahead of time, prepare your kids ahead of time by reviewing several times with them. You may inform them the day before or that morning, today we're going to have a program at 1:00. So, I'm excited about it just as well as you are, but we need to focus and stay on task until we get to that time. So just be in your planning phase or planning stages throughout, you plan your daily schedule, your weekly schedule, whatever. Just make sure that when you have those disruptions or those things that come up spur of the moment, that you prepare your kids for those. That helps keep down the anxiety and the stress level.
Mm-hmm. And so the kits that you received as part of this training, that's part of that, is that you've got your bag of things there with you. Yeah, you can take your clipboard and put your checklist for behavior on it. Right. You can do all kinds of things like that as part of those materials and resources that you've got. If you click to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about, we see that the regular ed teachers and the special ed teachers are in a classroom together, sometimes teaching in a co-teaching setting. Sometimes you're in the resource room with the special ed teacher and it's just you and the special ed teacher. Both of those instances, you have station teaching that happens, that you can have station teaching. And what we mean by station teaching is that you have that, and if you can see that little phone that's on that icon there, you'll see that there can be 2 or 3 stations set up in a classroom. We call them learning centers. We call them small group work. Some people call them learning stations. We call them all kinds of different things. But what they really are is a space that's set up for small groups of students to work together. And so you'll probably find yourself in a setting when the station teaching is occurring. So there may be you as leading a station. You may have a special ed teacher leading a station, a regular ed teacher leading a station. You may even have a speech and language pathologist that's in there, or you may have somebody with reading recovery that's in a classroom working with students. But what happens in a station teaching is that we have different learning occurring at those small groups. And again, that's one of the things that we know that's such an important role that you have as a paraeducator, is being able to run and facilitate a station. And being equipped to do that will make your job easier again and make it better for students. And we can really advance student learning that way. So when you think about that, you'll work with the teacher or both teachers to try to decide what that instruction is going to be and how you deliver that instruction. But you have an opportunity to take some of this learning, some of those things that experience that you had, and apply that in that setting, because you do have an important job facilitating that group and monitoring kids, keeping up with kids, keeping them on task. And then you've got maybe 2 or 3 kids that you're working with in that group, and some of them have different needs. So your job is really important. So we just want to help support that. And we want to make sure that we, do all that we can to support our students, because really that's what we're in the business for is to support our students, and particularly our students with disabilities. And so just know what station teaching is. It's it's one of the models of co-teaching, and it's the one that's probably most often that you will be experiencing. Now, you may be in a resource room and pull a group of students off to a small group as well, and that's called an alternative teaching. But again, you'll be facilitating or running that station, and being a big part of how that learning occurs there. So thinking about that, think about those activities that Stephanie shared with you, her and Vonda shared with you, or ones that Chastity and Vonda had, about how do you use those multisensory techniques and how you can catch kids up that way. Because they need all the extra practice and multiple opportunities to practice, and your feedback, that becomes so important for them. And
I think station teaching lends to that opportunity where you have a small group to build those relationships, to encourage that positive behaviors, to also sneak in some social skills lessons, quick things like that, daily living skills and things like that with station teaching. But you get to see all the kids in small group settings so that you can build those relationships. And we all know how important relationships are when it comes to, academics, and it comes to supporting those young people and encouraging those kids. So station teaching, I think, helps lend to that.
And really, Doug, that made me think about modeling. So as you're there and you're running that station, just like Doug was saying, there's an opportunity for you to model some of that social emotion, or some of that appropriate social interaction. Because, let's say you're teaching students how to, back from the second step curriculum from a long time ago, I think about how do you teach students to interrupt politely, or how do you get students to engage in a conversation? And that might be something your students are working on. You model that in those small groups, and students can see how that happens in a more personalized setting, right? So you teach them how to do that. You give them an opportunity to practice. So it is important, not only just for the academic piece, the manipulatives and the math piece. It's important for modeling those appropriate social behaviors, but supporting that social emotional learning and connecting with kids emotionally and building those relationships. So it's a real critical role that you play every day.
I also think it encourages teamwork. You're modeling how to work together with your peers, your colleagues. So it encourages teamwork. And then, like you said, that modeling that behavior, the kids seeing you and their teachers or you folks working together, then they're going to pick up on that. So.
I think so.
The other thing is with station teaching, you're more apt to catch the little things that students aren't understanding. So you're able to really observe and watch a student. Sometimes it's in handwriting that you notice that a student's writing something incorrectly. Maybe they start at the bottom for a 3 and go up. Those kind of things. So little things like that you can catch very quickly. Sometimes the way they're thinking in mathematics, it may be something that they're not fully connecting with. They may be getting the right answer, but they don't understand why. So asking those questions during that station teaching, like they said, because it's more personal, you can actually get a good understanding of where your students are at.
Absolutely. If you go ahead and advance to the next slide there. So I'm sorry. So that's good. So if you don't have questions right now, and please feel free to stop us at any point and ask a question. Like I said, turn your camera on, raise your hand using the annotation on the Zoom meeting, or just jump right in, put it in the chat. But so Stephanie and Doug are going to talk a little bit to you about some activity, about some cognitive games and academic games. So we're talking about, that time when we don't have that structured lesson occurring, but what we're looking for activities that will help kids, they're meaningful for kids. We've got some ideas for some games that go along with some of the materials that are already in your bag. So let's say you got a little bit of time in between classes, a little bit of time, like I said, schedules have overlapped, or, you've had a special guest, whatever. But there may be some times in your day when you have a small group of students that you're working with. We want to give you some examples of some cognitive, and what we mean by that is, how do we help build IQ? In theory, we think that IQ stays the same, but a lot of the new research is telling us that we can really impact IQ. And so part of that is playing some of these games that we call, it comes from this training with Dr. Carol Brown and Equipping Minds. And she gives us some ideas about how we help enhance that or practice that cognitive and support cognitive development. And not only can we do that, we can do that and connect with academics based on what kids already know. So you use things that kids already know, like numbers and letters and colors and shapes, and you build on that, and you create, and you have activities that support that. And again, that repetition and that practice and that learning gives them that opportunity to strengthen both areas. So they're going to give you some examples of some games to play. Again, those are with things that's already in your bag, so you don't have to go hunt anything. But think about how you can spend 20 minutes with your student or your small group of students playing some of these games. And so one of you all want to go ahead and start, and I'm going to just pause right there and let them take over and show you guys some great activities to help that.
So one of the things that I used to do as a teacher was when we would go on field trips, I kept a small bag with me that had cards and those kind of things in them, because I knew that was a way on the bus to manage some behaviors with certain kids, because we could have them playing some games together, and they could do it in the seat between them or whatever. So this is just one way to do that. Also up and down the hallway if I needed to. It's a good way to refresh my kids. So cards are wonderful, but Doug and I are going to play this game called Salute. And
We are.
yeah, and Dionne's going to be our person too. She's going to help. This is for 3 kids to play together, so this is really good for a small group. And the reason it's called Salute is you have a general, and Dionne's going to be our general. And we're going to talk today about the fact that she's going to say salute. We're going to actually pick up a card and we're going to stick it on her forehead, right? And we're going to look at each other. So we are going to do this, and Dionne's going to tell us what these 2 cards add up to. Now, for right now, she's just going to add the 2 numbers. That's all we're going to worry about. And we're going to change this up in just a few minutes. So if you're working with kids and they can do up to 10, you only pull out numbers, well, of course, the ace, because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you're working with kids that need more than that, like they're able to do to 20, then go ahead and pull all the cards out to 10. So, and this is really good because we have a lot of kids who are not fluent with addition and subtraction. So for right now, Dionne's going to actually be our general, because she doesn't understand the subtraction piece as well right now, so she's going to be comfortable with this. And so that's how I usually pick my kids to be the general. And like I said, she's going to say salute, and you're going to watch Doug and I do this game. So Miss Dionne,
Salute.
and Doug, you're going to look at me. What's our answer?
5.
Oh, so Doug, mine must be 2.
Okay.
Am I correct?
You are correct, Stephanie.
So, Doug, what do you have?
Well, if you have 2, the answer is 5. I must have 3.
Yeah. So see how our students can do this, and then of course they can check. Do I have 2? Yes, I have 2. Now we're going to do it again. This time, Miss Dionne is going to multiply the answer, and she's going to give us the product. So now if they're working within multiplication, again, if they know certain ones, those are the cards you use. But you can make it a little harder, and they can start to build on this, and so they can see it. So she's going to give us what it is.
Salute. 8.
Okay, so Doug and I look at each other. I must have 4.
Okay.
I must have 2.
You must have to. Are
And
you
then we can
correct?
check.
Yes, you both are correct.
Oh,
4 times 2 is 8.
Now, to make this a little harder for our kids who are in middle school or in high school, because they don't understand integers, sometimes that's an issue. So red cards are negatives and black cards are positive. So Dionne's going to add these together and tell us if these were integers, what the answer would be. And we are going to, of course, try to figure out our part. Now, remember, Doug and I are in this situation, we're doing the harder part because she's just adding them up. We're trying to figure out what it would be if it was subtracting. That's the same thing with those. We were figuring out what was the factor. We were figuring out what was the add-ins, those kind of things. So we were doing the subtraction piece of her addition. So keep that in mind.
So I'm going to
Salute again.
I'm just going to say salute and tell you the total. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Keep in mind that negatives are red and positives are black.
Okay. Salute. Okay. Your total is 12.
Look at each other. So I must have positive 8.
And then if it's 12, I must have a positive 4.
You are correct.
Yeah.
So we can do this. Now we're going to do that again with multiplication. So she's going to multiply these and we're going to try to figure that out.
Okay. Your total is 32.
Let's look at each other, Doug.
Positive or negative?
Negative.
Okay, this is a negative 32. So I must have a negative 8.
I must have a positive 4.
Yes.
You
So
are
there we go.
correct.
Yeah.
That
So
required some thinking.
That does require some thinking.
No doubt.
And so for your kids, like I said, this is a game that can be scaffolded all the way up through, and our kids are always needing help with fluency and those kind of things. So this is a really good game for them to be able to play.
And I think, I mean, I struggle with this stuff. So I think when our kids see you having that productive struggle and you know, working through that, it helps to build that resiliency in our kids, and it helps them to understand that, you know, not everything comes easy to everyone. So, you know, and it's all right if you have difficulty. You got to continue to work through and press forward.
And this is one of those games, if you got 3 kids that are working together, and maybe you need to work with one individually, because you know, sometimes you've got 4 kids, right? And one needs more assistance. So you can have them playing this game, but if you want to check them each time, have them to write it down. So Miss Dionne gave me the answer. I tell them a place for the answer to go on the page, and then they have to put the add-ins, or they have to put the factors, those kind of things in.
Let's try and let's model that,
Model that,
please.
okay?
Eraser, please. Check it.
Let me grab us some paper.
Mm.
Okay. So Doug and I are going to model this.
Addition.
So we're going to do just addition.
Okay.
We're going to model that.
So we're going to put a, oh, look at there. Woo.
Or we can write them across. It can be either one, however you want to set that up. And then you can put your equal sign. And then remember, Dionne's giving us the equal.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so here we go.
Salute. Okay, your total is 10.
So we're going to look at each other. I must have 3.
So Miss Stephanie has a 3. Our total was 10. Again, we have 3. We have 10. So that means that I must have a 7.
And so they can see that.
So Stephanie, talk a little bit about that. Gets kids being able to kind of concrete to semi-concrete, right? Like,
Yes.
you know, hey, kids see things sometimes and they can't see it in their mind. This kind of helps build them to be able to see that, build those models in their mind. They
And
know
that-
what that number looks like.
That's a good self-check too for kids too, because they can see that 4. And not only can they see that 4, I can count that 4. And so if a kid's having some trouble with that, they can always go back and they can actually lay these cards down and actually be able to count on them if they need to. So that's another thing that we need to keep in mind with cards. They're really good for that semi-concrete stage because they're right there and I can actually count with them. All right, so Doug, the next game that we talked about we're going to play is Keep It Within 20. So I'm going to hand you the cards and you're going to put them under the document camera.
All right.
So Keep It Within 20 is just that. It has to be within 0 and 20. Now, again, this is a game that's very diverse, and we can say they're just adding and subtracting, right? So in this case, we're subtracting if it's a red card, and they're adding if it is a card that's black. So that's one of the things that we want to keep in mind with this. Doug's having issues here. I'm trying to make this darker is what I'm trying to do real quick, but I don't think we're going to be able to. Let's just go back to this. Okay, so to start this game out, again, we're only using ace up into the 10, right? But again, if the kids can't do that, we're going to scale back and they're only going to get ace to 5 because we're working within 10. So keep that in mind too. So Doug's going to actually turn over 1 and he's going to have it at the bottom down here. So this is a 4, okay? And now we're just going to pretend this is a 4 for right now because otherwise if this was a negative, you'd already be out of 0 to 20, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So we don't want that to happen. We're going to say the first card is just going to be that number. Now every card after that, he's going to turn over 2 and he's going to have to choose. So he's going to turn over 2 and he's going to have to choose, is he adding 1 or is he subtracting 9? Now that's the way this is going to work. So Doug, you got to keep it between 0 and 20. So what are you going to do?
So if I add 1 to the 4, that becomes a 5.
So add that on there. And so you can model that with the kids too and have them to write it down. So he started out with 4 He's adding 1, he's at 5. So add that 1 on top.
So do I do this?
Yep.
Now, does this become the 1?
Nope, this becomes
stays
5.
five.
Stays as 5. You gotta keep that 5 in your mind. This is really hard for kids. Now remember, they have to keep it between 0 and 20. So that's the next thing that they're going to do.
Right, so again, I have 5. If I subtract 9, that's gonna put me below 0.
Yep, can't
If
do
I
that
add
one.
5, I'm gonna go to a 10, so I'm gonna add 5. So
Yep.
that now becomes 10.
So he's adding 5, and I will have him just keep a little check like this right here, and he's at 10. And he can actually have this as a visual.
So flip the next card. Oh, next card is 10. So I can either subtract 9 or I can add 10. I want to stay within 0 to 20. So I think I'll subtract 9 this time.
Okay, so he's going to subtract 9. So at this point, what's your answer?
It would be 1.
So he's at 1.
So flip the next card, which is a 3. So this time I'm going to add either one of those. So I'm going to add 10.
Okay, so he's adding 10, and that makes you
11. Next card is a 7, -7. So if I add 3 or subtract 7, I'm at 11, so I'm going to subtract 7.
okay. And he's adding those up real quick, isn't it?
5. I hope.
No, it's 4.
4. You want to play? All right. So now I'm adding 7. And so I know if 11 take away 7 is 4, 4 plus 7 must be 11.
There you
Right. And then 11, and I'm adding 3 this time.
go. Okay, so we're adding 3. Just see how they're keeping this up.
So
The goal is for that student to get all the way through the deck, and we've got farther than we've actually ever
Yeah.
got.
mhm.
We played this several times the other day and busted like one from the 4 cards. So he would have 14.
So
And so he would keep on doing this until you bust. And the thing is, I'm sorry, excuse me. And look at how many problems he's done. Did you feel like you were really doing math problems?
no.
No. And that's a big thing about it. Our kids go through this and they're playing these games and they really don't understand that they're playing problems. I can give my student the same amount on a worksheet and they would probably just shut down because that's a worksheet and it's got that many on there. But if we're doing them this way, it becomes a different thing. My kid's not upset. They're not frustrated because I've got all this to do. We're just playing through a game. But they're still doing those math problems.
And then writing this down really helped me because it is difficult for me to remember the total. And, so if I've got that visual representation, if I have that number written down, I can look back and say, oh, okay, all right, I know what my total is, because now if I looked at this, I would think, well, I've only got 3, but our total was 14. So I can look back and say, wait a minute, last time I played, it was added to 14. So that helps me just to know where I'm at and what I'm going to. Okay.
And a lot of times our kids that have like a mild cognitive disability or a functional disability like MMD or FMD, they have trouble holding those numbers in their head. It could be our kids who have attention problems, and like Doug said, writing those down gives them a strategy. So you're not only building their academic math fluency, you're helping them have a strategy to organize their information and to keep track of where they are. So it's got a lot of benefits for students to be able to use these games. And again, it is fun. That was fun, and it's okay. It's an environment where if they make a mistake, it's okay. It's an environment where if you make an error, then you go back and correct that. And it gives kids an opportunity to be successful. It gives them something fun to do. Y'all ready for the next one?
Yeah. Next one is just I guess working memory or processing speed kind of game, and it also helps with language development as well. And this is a game that is in the Equipping Minds curriculum by Dr. Carol Brown. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a deck of playing cards. We like to use Uno cards too, or something with different colors or whatever. So blank is a very good card game if you have blank. But since we have a deck of cards, what you do is you're just going to take a deck of cards. And the first card you see, you're going to say the number. So this is a number 2. The next card you're going to see is the color, red. And the next card would be the suit. What suit is that?
I started to say
Club.
puppy feet because that's what my sister called them for the longest time. When she would feel of them, they
Right.
felt like little puppy feet.
And that's a good point.
Gloves.
All right, and that's a good point too. When you're playing this game, you want to make sure. All right, so I see some folks see a clover, some see puppy tracks, some see that it is a club. So whatever it is that the kids call it, just so that you agree on that, what that is. So the next time you start over again, you're going to say the number, 8. You're going to say the color,
Black.
and then you're going to say the
Club.
club. Very good. So because with language development, when you start talking, you say 1 red apple. Usually the sequence of language that you develop. So again, number,
6.
color,
Red.
suit.
Heart.
Number,
10.
10.
Black. Heart. 6. Black. Spade.
3.
3.
Black.
Black. 6. Club.
So it's a little hard to do that. You don't have to do all those. You can start with an A-B pattern if you need to. So just think about moving it that way if you want to, and then move on to the other. So.
And another way to make it a little more challenging. Okay, so we got our number. Okay, so we got 5, and then we have red, and then we have hearts. So this time we're going to add 1 to the number. So if I flip the number, this becomes a what?
2.
2. The color is the same.
Red.
Red, and then clubs.
Club.
Add 1.
3.
3. Okay,
Red.
So it's number. It's supposed to be number, right?
3 red diamond.
Right. Add 1.
2 red club.
Subtract 1.
1 black spade.
All right, good. So then to make it a little more difficult, you can add 1.
6.
Opposite color.
Black.
And then the suit.
Oh, clubs.
There you go.
I get those mixed up.
Yeah, so add 1.
8.
Opposite color. Black. And then the suit.
Okay. Diamonds.
Diamond.
That's the one I get confused on. I'm
Add
sorry.
1.
5.
And diamonds are girls' best friend.
Not really. Gardening is.
Opposite
Red.
suit.
And then, of course, spades.
All right. So then you can make it a little more difficult by adding 2, multiplying 3, whatever, just different ways to make it a little more difficult. But I always start with the easiest and work up to that frustration level, because you don't want the kids to be frustrated with the game as soon as you start, because if you do, then you've lost them. So it's just a cool little math game with a deck of playing cards.
And you may want to go through and make sure they know all the numbers first,
Yes,
right?
that's a good
You know,
point.
and or all the shapes first. So you may need to spend some time for them just to learn the numbers or the shapes.
Yeah, you're setting them up for success.
Yes,
that
that's
way.
right.
Yeah, especially, and if your kiddos only know 1 through 5, then just use the first 5. I mean, if they only know 2 suits, or if you want to just start out with using 2 suits, use, a heart and a spade. Or maybe you want to use something that's contrasting in lightness. You may want to use a club and a diamond, so that they don't look alike.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So deck of playing cards.
So our next
Good
thing
for
is
you.
we're going to talk about some matching games, and also with some tic-tac-toe, which is pretty much easier to do with tic-tac-toe. Talk about those and where you see them at.
Right. So one way I like to start if we're playing tic-tac-toe is I like to number the board. First you draw out a tic-tac-toe board, then I number it, so I know where I'm going to put my playing piece. So for instance, you have two different colors. So Miss Dionne and I are going to play. And then when you're working with your students, you have them, of course, they pick the cubes up using a pincer grip. That helps with that fine motor skills. So I see myself, and you have the kids repeat it. So you model this behavior. So Miss Dionne, I see myself putting a red cube on number 3.
Okay. I see myself putting a black cube on number 5.
I see myself putting a red cube on number 9.
I see myself putting a black cube on number 6.
I see myself putting a red cube on number 4 for the block.
I see myself putting a black cube on the 2.
I see myself putting a red cube on the 1.
I see myself putting a black cube on the 8 for the win.
I see myself taking the cubes off again. So, and then, like I said, I like using the numbers. You could use letters. You could use whatever represents something that's meaningful to that kid. And then with the numbers, after you get used to the numbers, you can say, all right, I see myself putting a red cube in the top right-hand corner.
I see myself putting a cube in the top left-hand corner.
I see myself putting a red cube in the bottom row center.
I see myself putting a black cube in the center.
I see myself putting a red cube on the right-hand bottom row.
I see myself beat, I think, by Doug. I see myself putting a black cube on the bottom left hand.
I see myself putting a red cube right-hand row, or middle row, right-hand side. For the win. Woo! She let me win, but thank you. All right. So then after you get through, if you're used to the numbers or whatever, you can erase the numbers and that. And you can also, if the kids get good enough with this game and you get good enough with this game, just play without having the board and just think about, you know, have it in their head of where they're placing those cubes or where they're placing X's and O's or whatever representation you have. So
Another thing you can do is the two boards. So that's one that you can do that's real good.
you can.
So do we want to demonstrate that one for them?
Sure.
All right, so good example is we're going to have the board at the top and it's going to be labeled, of course. Not my best penmanship here. So Dionne's going to play off of the top board, Doug's going to play off of the bottom board, and they have to visualize where those are at.
Okay.
Or do you want me to play with it?
You can.
Okay. He's not wanting to do this one. So Dionne, you can go first. You're going to use top board.
Okay, I see myself putting a black cube on the 5.
Okay, I see myself putting a red cube on 1.
I see myself putting a black cube on the 7.
I see myself putting a red cube on 3 to block Dionne.
I see myself putting a black cube on the 2 to block Stephanie.
I see myself putting a red cube on 8 to block Dionne.
I see myself putting a black cube on the 4.
I see myself putting a red cube on 6.
Okay, so I see myself putting a black cube on the 9.
And no one wins.
So we have a
So
tie.
you can see how they have to be able to visualize both boards. And Doug's like, sure. So
yeah.
this one's a little harder to do, but for those older kids, this is a really good way to get that working memory and having to really see and concentrate on where things are. And that's really good for their spatial, because that's a problem we have, left and right, those kind of things, and being able to see that spatial. So this is really good for that. It's a little bit more challenging and adds a little bit more to that. So that's a really good one. And like I said, 2 kids playing it, it's not a hard thing for them to do. So you have another one that you want to do?
I'm good.
He's done.
No.
You can also do the repeating patterns.
Brain blow.
Real
Yes.
simple. There's the repeating patterns. So I might make a model and then you have to repeat it.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Like so.
Mhm.
All right.
Now she needs one like that too.
Well, then we can do that.
So
Oh yeah, you need to take a picture.
Yeah. And here, I'll just draw another one of those out on this side. That's fine.
Right. So you want to explain this one? So it's called, I guess, well,
Take a picture.
take a picture or whatever. So you, I wish you would have started easier, but you know how it goes there. Anyway. So what you do is you create I guess like Miss Dionne was saying, a model or something that you put on this board. And if we have how many objects you have or whatever, you give those students that amount of time to look at those objects then you say, take a picture or think about, and then you cover it. And then you have the students repeat that pattern if at all possible.
And they can do it on their own board if they need to. So that's the reason why I did another board. So Doug's gonna try to create that picture.
All right. So then she'll remove the paper and she'll say, check.
Check.
I'll check. Am I correct? No, the
I
one
think
that
you're
I
missing
missed
one.
was the red cube. So then check.
Check.
Cool. So it does really get a little complicated or a little more difficult when you have different colored cubes and add those in. So again, you would start easy.
And you may only want to start with four squares.
Right.
And you can also do things like this, turn them, one direction, one this direction, and then one up. That kind of makes it complicated.
And of course, I really like the fact that we have two different colors working here, because at this point, Dionne can actually do different colors too. So you can add that in. So if you've got different colors in your bag, that you can use those, and then make sure that student has the same colors that you have, because you want them to match that also.
Got this one.
And you can also go as far as putting them in the corners, those kind of things to make it more difficult.
Check.
Check.
You got it. Correct.
Thank you. Man, that's difficult.
It is difficult. Like I said, you can
Get
choose
something
those for
else.
corners and those kind of things too, and that way they have to get really precise in the corners, and that helps them with top, bottom, left, right, those kind of things. So the other one we've got, and Doug's gonna do this one too, it's a little math thing, and this is a good way, like I said, you're doing some math problems, but you're not, that's why we put you in the center.
Yeah, figured that out finally.
You're doing some math problems, but they're really not math problems. They just see numbers at first. And the cool thing is that we can do multiplication and we can do addition here too. And if we're doing addition in mathematics, we always say if you're doing addition, you're also doing subtraction, because they go hand in hand. If we're doing multiplication, you're doing division, they go hand in hand. So you only use the numbers that the kids are familiar with. So I make sure I just check and make sure that Doug knows numbers 1 through 6 in this case. And then I say, okay, we're going to add 1 today. And so only thing Doug's doing is he's going to verbalize it out loud. So he would go through and he would say 1 plus 1 is
2.
And so he will write the 2 right on top. So he's going to go through and just demonstrate the first row. Okay.
So 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 plus 1 would be 3. 3 plus 1, 4. 5 plus 1 would be 6. 6 plus 1, 7. 3 plus 1, again, is 4. 1 plus 1 would be 2.
Now, the cool thing about this is, Doug, guess what you've done? You did all your addition. You did a great job. Now, I'm going to pull this out. Now, right below that, let's do the subtraction of that. Remember, you added 1, so now let's subtract 1.
Oh, 2 subtract 1 would be 1. 5 subtract 1, 4. 3 subtract 1, 2. 4 subtract 1, 3. 6 subtract 1 would be 5. 7 subtract 1 is 6. 4 subtract 1 is 3. And then 2 subtract 1 is 1.
And so at this point, Doug can just check. We can lay the paper back down and he can check. See how easy that was for him to do? Now, if he's really good at his ones, now we're going to do 2s. And if he's really good at 2s, we're going to move on up. So we can do this all the way through. And the big one is crossing that decade for our students. They have a lot of trouble when they get to 10, because after 10 comes 11. Doesn't sound right, does it? After 11 comes 12. Those numbers they have trouble with. So adding that 10 to them and saying them out loud is a big key component here. Because if I've got 1 and I'm adding 10, that becomes 11. If I've got 1, I'm adding 4, that becomes 14. So unlike all of our other numbers, that is 21, our 10 comes after the number. So that's a big thing for us to remember. That's why they're so hard for our kids when they start doing that counting part, is because in that part, the 10 comes after the number. It's not like 21, 22, where I hear that 2. If I was adding 20 to that, right, it'd be 21, 24, 22. for our kids, especially when they're learning, adding that 10 is really hard for them. So keep those in mind. So you would do that. If I was doing multiplication, it would be the same thing. I'm just multiplying threes. So if my kids are just working on threes, this is a good way for them to do that. If I'm just working on fours, I would do that. And then of course I'm going to pull it off and I'm going to say, now you're going to divide by 3, or you're going to divide by 4, whatever number you did, that's the number you're going to divide by. So we're working on those together each time, and we're getting that understanding down for them too. Like I said, this is really abstract for our kids. But the other thing that you can do with this is if you've got a small kindergartner or a kid who really doesn't understand numbers or understand the magnitude of a number, those Unifix cubes, I can take those and I can build right on top of those numbers. So Dionne, good example, start with 1, just build 1, now build 4. And I may only put like 10 numbers on here at the time. And so they would just build on top of those numbers, and then they could see that. And so those are the numbers, and then they can build on top of those. So, a lot of math today. So that's what I like. And then we can talk about this one. Look at here. This was 4, this is 5. Now, what do you notice about 4 and 5, Doug?
5's larger.
5's larger. By how much?
1.
By 1. And so we can have those conversations too. Just keep that in mind. And we can talk about what's the difference between 1 and 3, those kind of things.
We could get into greater than and less than as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So 2 things that I just thought about is, 1, the materials that they've got a set of these Unifix cubes in their bags. And all you need is some clear protector sheets.
They have those in their bag.
That's what I was going to say. The other thing is, 2, is that, a clear protector sheet and a piece of cardstock, or this is just regular paper that you have at school, can make these. So if you wanted to do this game with a small group, or with just, maybe 2 or 3 students, you could do that with 2 or 3 students. And you could have them all, get kind of sit around in the horseshoe table at school, and you could have them model that and make those models and work with them. So you can do the same thing, with letters. So there's lots of opportunities to do that. And so we have more of those games on our Holler website. And if you have a question about that or want to learn some more about that, you have my email or any of our email here at KVEC. We can get you some more information, because again, these are things that are real quick. If you've got in your toolbox or your bag that you bring to school and you've got that ready, or you've got a little spot where you work out every day in a small group or a station, or if you move around, you can take your stuff with you. So
these games also encourage cooperation, teamwork, taking turns, communication, all kinds of skills, daily living skills that we kind of take for granted sometimes that some of our kids need to work on. So really cool.
But it's about time for us to conclude this session, because we want to give you an opportunity for some feedback. So I've just dropped into the chat the feedback form.
But if you have an iPhone, you can use the QR code on the screen.
So yeah, you can just hold your phone over there, open the camera button, hold that over the circle, and do the feedback. But we appreciate your feedback, and we use that feedback to help understand more about what you need and more professional learning that you might need. So if that was something that you wanted or needed, thinking about when we come back to school. So I know you guys are finishing up your school year this year, and give you some ideas about some things to try. You could try some of these games with kids that you have in your own family, or your neighbor's kids, or whatever. But you kind of practice with the games and get them ready, and have your toolbox ready, because that's one of the things that we know is the most important, is again that high impact, low prep. These activities that we told you have a high impact, and they take very little preparation. They can fill that time, and we know how it is. Another thing Dr. Anita Archer says is avoid the void, or they'll fill it. And so what we're talking about is that downtime. And sometimes we have that. So if we are using every single minute of our day to do something productive, and it can be fun, it can be blocks and color, it can be numbers, blocks, cards, but that we're keeping kids busy, they're a lot less likely to get in trouble, and a lot more likely to do better academically.
The other thing she says, if you expect it, pre-correct it. So like Doug said earlier, if you know there's going to be a fire alarm and this kid's going to be having an issue, pre-correct that by talking to them.
Or like Stephanie said, the idea about on the bus taking a deck of cards. Well, how many times do you have kids misbehaving on the bus? It's a good idea. So playing games, keeping kids engaged, keeping them thinking and participating is really, really important. It helps a lot with managing behaviors and just keeping them on task. So think about all those kids that you work with. You know, our students with disabilities have a lot of different needs, but you know, you play a very important role in meeting those needs, and you really can impact change for those kids. So we appreciate that, all that you do every day. Your job is hard. We understand that it is a hard job, and we appreciate you. And thank you for participating in our conference. I think this is the final session in our conference. We'd love to hear feedback from you. Like, you know, we'd love to have more opportunities like this. You know, feedback about your kits. We'd like to hear about that. Was that good? Was it something that's useful to you? So any feedback that you can give us, we appreciate.
Even if you have some ideas about some topics or some things that you'd like for more information about, please email us or whatever. I just want to say thank you for the job that you do for the kids that you work with, for the teachers that you, in my case, the teacher was kept up by prior professionals. I think I couldn't have made it in my classroom without my instructional assistants, my paraprofessionals. Wonderful, wonderful job. You guys do an amazing job, guys and gals. And thank you so much for everything that you do. Like I said, for the teachers, for the students, for the school, the community, and just you're just an awesome bunch of folks. Really appreciate you all.
Okay, we'll conclude now. Thank you for participating. Again, the feedback form is in the chat. So if you don't care, to make sure you get that filled out before you leave. And thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the games.